At the very height of the Cold War, the United States pulled off one of the most audacious and secret experiments in all of human history. And no, this wasn't about building a bigger bomb. This was about weaponizing the very space around our planet. So today, we're diving into the declassified files on a mission known only as Project Argus.
So get this, when the story finally broke a full year after it all went down, this is how the New York Times described it: the greatest scientific experiment ever conducted. What on earth could they have possibly done in secret that would merit a headline like that? Well, the answer is both absolutely brilliant and, frankly, terrifying.
To really wrap our heads around Project Argus, we have to go back to the late 1950s. The space race is just kicking into high gear. Cold War paranoia is absolutely through the roof, and the world is being mapped in ways no one ever thought possible. Not just on the ground, but way, way up above it.
Now, when you hear nuclear tests, you're probably picturing those mushroom clouds rising over a Pacific island. But this was something else entirely. It was all done in complete secrecy, out in the middle of nowhere, and at altitudes that were, up until then, pretty much just science fiction.
The whole reason for this insane operation was built on a radical new theory, and it was only possible because of a brand new and totally unexpected discovery about our planet's own natural defenses. So, in early 1958, America's very first satellite, Explorer 1, sends back this startling data. Turns out the Earth is surrounded by these massive belts of trapped radiation, what we now call the Van Allen belts. They're like our planet's natural shields. But almost as soon as we found them, one physicist asked a really incredible question.
And that physicist was Nicholas Christophopoulos. His idea was, simple on the surface, but just staggering in its ambition. He thought, okay, if the Earth's magnetic field can trap natural radiation, could we use it to trap man-made radiation, say, from a nuclear bomb?
And this is the core of it, the Christophilus effect. The idea was that detonating a nuke way up in the atmosphere wouldn't just be a momentary flash. No, the theory was that the explosion would unleash this massive flood of electrons that would get caught in the planet's magnetic field and then spread out to form a stable, artificial shell of deadly radiation around the entire globe. This is where it gets really wild.
Now, a theory this bold and this potentially game-changing wasn't going to stay on a blackboard for long. So what do you do next? Well, if you're the Pentagon in 1958, you move, and you move fast. The brand new Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA, jumped on it and mobilized one of the most secret naval operations of the entire Cold War.
And I mean, they moved unbelievably fast. Think about this. Christophilus proposes his theory in late 1957. It takes just a few months to get it sponsored, plan the whole mission, and then actually conduct the first nuclear test in August of '58. This was a program on an absolute mission.
To pull it off, they put together a secret fleet, designated Task Force 88. It sailed to a remote stretch of the South Atlantic Ocean. And we're talking a huge undertaking here. 9 ships, 4,500 people, and every single one of them was sworn to absolute secrecy.
And look at the complexity of this whole operation. You've got the USS Norton Sound, which is actually launching the missiles down in the South Atlantic. The carrier, USS Tarawa, is acting as the command center. But here's the really clever part. Look at the USS Albemarle. It's positioned thousands of miles away in the North Atlantic, right at the magnetic conjugate point. It was waiting to see if the effects would actually travel along the Earth's magnetic field lines, just like the theory predicted.
So, the theory was in place. A secret armada was on station. It was time to see if humanity could actually bend the forces of nature to its will and create something that had never, ever existed before.
Over just 2 weeks, the task force ran 3 separate tests. For each one, a rocket carried a small nuclear warhead way, way up into the exosphere. That's the outermost layer of our atmosphere, right where it starts to fade into the vacuum of space. Just think about that altitude for a second. 300 miles up. That is higher than the International Space Station orbits today. They were literally detonating nuclear weapons in space. There was no mushroom cloud, no blast wave, just this silent, kind of terrifying release of pure energy.
But it wasn't completely invisible. The crews on the ships in an observation plane saw an immediate and just stunning effect. The declassified reports talk about the charged particles from the blast hitting the upper atmosphere, creating what one person called an awesome aurora display that just danced in the sky for a full half hour. And wouldn't you know it, the theory worked perfectly.
The Explorer Ivy satellite, which was launched specifically to watch these tests, flew right through the detonation zones, and its instruments just went completely wild. It confirmed it. Project Argus had successfully created a man-made belt of trapped electrons, a radioactive shell enveloping the entire planet.
So they did it. They proved it could be done. But that brings us to the biggest, most important question of all. Why? Why on earth would anyone want to wrap the planet in a layer of artificial radiation? Well, the answer lies in the grim logic of Cold War strategy.
There were three main military goals here. First, a communications blackout. All that radiation could mess with or even block enemy radio and radar. Second, a defense against ICBMs. The intense radiation could literally fry the sensitive electronics of incoming warheads, acting like a shield against a nuclear attack. And third, area denial. It would make that whole region of space lethal to any enemy astronauts or cosmonauts trying to pass through it.
When you boil it all down, the legacy of Project Argus is pretty profound. It was really the moment humanity realized that the final frontier wasn't just a place for peaceful exploration. It could be a theater of war. The heavens themselves could be engineered into a weapon.
It just makes you wonder, right? If an experiment this massive, detonating nukes in space to create an artificial radiation belt, could be kept totally secret from the entire world for a year, what else was going on in the shadows of the Cold War that we still don't know anything about?